There is a profound power in stillness that too many of us overlook. In the midst of our busy lives, we are constantly moving, constantly thinking, constantly reacting. Our minds race with schedules, responsibilities, and the endless noise of the world. And in that chaos, we forget one essential truth, that God is present and he desires to meet us in the quiet. Stillness is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is the sacred pause where our soul can align with the Creator, where our hearts can catch the rhythm of his will, and where our spirits can be renewed. When we allow ourselves to be still, we are making a deliberate choice to stop struggling under the weight of our circumstances and to trust in a power far greater than our own. It is in that sacred stillness that clarity begins to emerge, that peace begins to settle, and that faith becomes tangible. Consider how often we attempt to solve our problems with our own strength. We rush from one solution to the next, believing that action alone will bring relief. But there are seasons in life when action without reflection only leads to exhaustion. Stillness is not inactivity, it is purposeful pause. It is the moment when we step away from the noise, the distractions, and the demands of life, and we say, Lord, I am here, speak to me. Let me hear your voice. Let me feel your presence. In that sacred pause, we are reminded that we are not in control, but that the one who holds the universe is in control, and his plans for us are far greater than anything we could imagine. Stillness also allows us to confront our own hearts honestly. It is easy to avoid our fears, our doubts, and our pain when we are constantly busy, but stillness brings these things to the surface so that God's healing can reach them. In quiet moments of prayer, we can acknowledge our weaknesses without fear, surrender our burdens without hesitation, and open our hearts fully to receive divine guidance. There is a miraculous power in that act of surrender. It transforms anxiety into peace, confusion into wisdom, and weakness into strength. Moreover, stillness teaches patience. In a world that demands instant results and immediate gratification, being still reminds us that life unfolds according to God's timing, not ours. It trains our spirit to wait, to trust, and to hope. And in that waiting, in that stillness, we discover that God is not silent. He is moving behind the scenes, orchestrating circumstances, aligning opportunities, and preparing our hearts for breakthroughs that we could never force with our own hands. When you embrace stillness, you step into a place of power. It is a power not measured by control over others or achievements in the world, but by the inner strength and peace that come from knowing that God is with you. It is the power to face the day with courage, to make decisions with clarity, and to live with a heart unshaken by chaos. Stillness is the doorway to intimacy with God, the place where faith grows strong and where the soul discovers its true strength. There is something extraordinary about the first moments of the day. Before the demands, distractions, and pressures arrive, there is a quiet window, a sacred opportunity to center ourselves and connect with the one who holds our tomorrow. Starting the day in prayer is not simply a ritual or a routine. It is a deliberate choice to place God at the center of everything we do. When we rise each morning and speak to God first, we are declaring that our day will not be led by chaos, fear or confusion, but by his wisdom, guidance, and peace. It is in these moments, in the early stillness before the world calls our attention, that we set the spiritual tone for the hours that follow. The morning is a fresh canvas. The events of yesterday have passed with their successes and failures, their joys and disappointments. And while the future remains unseen, beginning the day in prayer invites God's presence to paint that canvas with his purpose and his clarity. When we bow our heads and lift our hearts in those early moments, we are not simply asking for blessings or solutions. We are aligning our will with his, allowing him to guide our decisions, our words, and our actions. There is a power in that alignment, a confidence that comes not from our own understanding, but from trusting in the one whose understanding is infinite. Starting the day in prayer also equips us to face challenges with resilience. Life will bring trials, and the unexpected is always lurking. But when we begin our day anchored in God, we approach difficulties not as victims of circumstance, but as overcomers armed with divine strength. Our perspective shifts. Obstacles become opportunities for growth. Setbacks become lessons in patience. And uncertainties become invitations to trust. Prayer in the morning reminds us that we do not walk alone. God walks with us, guides us, and prepares a way even when no way seems visible. Furthermore, morning prayer cultivates gratitude and focus. In the quiet of those first moments, we reflect on the blessings we often take for granted, the breath in our lungs, the warmth of our homes, the people who love us, and the promise of a new day. Gratitude awakens our hearts and opens our spirits to the abundance of God's presence. And focus comes naturally when we spend these moments seeking guidance before the noise and demands of life pull our attention in countless directions. We begin the day with purpose, clarity, and intention rather than reacting impulsively to circumstances. Morning prayer is also a declaration of faith. It says, I trust you, Lord, to lead me today. I may not know what lies ahead, but I know that you do. It transforms ordinary moments into encounters with the divine, mundane tasks into acts of obedience, and ordinary people into vessels of God's love and purpose. It is in the quiet of the morning that our hearts are strengthened, our minds are focused, and our spirits are prepared to walk boldly through the day, knowing that we are guided, protected, and empowered by a power far beyond ourselves. Prayer is more than a ritual. It is an act of active faith. Many people think of prayer as simply asking God for what we want, speaking our requests into the air, or reciting words out of habit. But true prayer is much deeper. It is a deliberate posture of trust, a declaration that we believe in God's power, his timing, and his plan even when circumstances seem uncertain. When we engage in prayer, we are not just speaking, we are exercising faith. Faith that God is listening, faith that his wisdom is greater than our understanding, faith that his presence is with us even when we cannot see the outcome. Prayer becomes active faith when it transforms the way we think, the way we act, and the way we respond to life's challenges. When we pray with active faith, we are stepping out of the illusion of control and into the reality of God's authority. We acknowledge that our plans may fail, but his plan cannot fail. We may not understand the path ahead, but we trust that he does. This faith is not passive, it is dynamic. It moves us from doubt to trust, from fear to courage, from despair to hope. Every time we choose to pray rather than panic, to surrender rather than struggle, we are exercising a faith that carries power, that shifts situations, and that aligns our hearts with God's will. Active faith in prayer also changes how we handle waiting. There are moments when God does not answer immediately, when his timing does not match ours. In those moments, faith becomes the anchor that holds us steady. Prayer is the vessel through which we express our trust in God even when results are delayed. It is the quiet confidence that says, Lord, I may not see it yet, but I believe you are working on my behalf. I trust your timing, and I will wait in faith. That is the essence of active faith, trusting and praying with expectancy, knowing that God is moving even in ways that are invisible to us. Moreover, prayer as active faith transforms our perspective. It helps us see obstacles not as insurmountable walls, but as opportunities for God's power to be revealed. It shifts our focus from what is lacking to what God can provide. It strengthens our spirit to persevere, our mind to think clearly, and our heart to remain steadfast. When we pray with faith, we are participating in a partnership with God where our surrender meets his power, and together miracles are made possible. Active faith in prayer also invites boldness into our lives. It encourages us to approach God with confidence, knowing that we are heard and that his promises are true. We no longer live in fear, indecision, or uncertainty. Prayer becomes our weapon, our shield, and our guide. It empowers us to take steps of obedience, to make choices aligned with God's will, and to walk boldly into the day, knowing that faith and action go hand in hand. True prayer is alive. It is the heartbeat of faith. It is the evidence of trust. And when we pray with active faith, we are not only seeking God's guidance, we are demonstrating that we believe in his power to transform our lives, our circumstances, and our world. Prayer is often misunderstood as a one-way conversation, a moment where we speak to God and present our requests, our worries, and our desires. But the true power of prayer lies not only in speaking, but in listening and receiving. To pray effectively is to open the heart and mind to God's voice, to allow his wisdom, guidance, and peace to flow into our lives. Listening in prayer requires patience, humility, and attentiveness. It requires us to quiet our thoughts, still our emotions, and step away from the noise of the world. Only then can we hear the gentle whispers of God that lead us to clarity, direction, and transformation. When we listen in prayer, we begin to understand that God is not distant or silent. He is present and active, guiding our steps, shaping our hearts, and preparing the way even when we cannot see it. Listening transforms prayer from a monologue into a dialogue, from a list of demands into a partnership with the divine. In these moments of attentiveness, our hearts begin to align with God's will. Our understanding expands beyond the limits of our human perspective, and we gain insight into solutions, opportunities, and pathways that we would never have discovered on our own. Listening in prayer is how we receive the wisdom and discernment that life requires. Receiving in prayer is equally important. Many of us pray, yet we struggle to accept the answers God provides, especially when they do not match our expectations. To receive is to trust that God's timing, methods, and plans are perfect, even when they differ from what we imagine. It is an act of surrender, a recognition that God knows what is best and that His provisions and guidance are sufficient. When we learn to receive in prayer, we open ourselves to blessings, opportunities, and divine intervention that might otherwise pass unnoticed. Receiving requires faith, patience, and gratitude, and it is in this posture that God's power flows most freely into our lives. Listening and receiving in prayer also deepen our relationship with God. Prayer is not just a tool for asking, it is a means of communion. Through listening, we hear His promises and instructions. Through receiving, we experience His presence and provision. These practices strengthen our spiritual sensitivity, enabling us to recognize God's hand in every circumstance and His guidance in every decision. Life becomes less about navigating challenges alone and more about partnering with a loving, all-knowing God who is always present and ready to lead us. When we combine speaking, listening, and receiving, prayer becomes a transformative experience. It renews the mind, heals the heart, and strengthens the spirit. It equips us to face each day with courage and confidence, knowing that we are not alone, that God is actively working on our behalf, and that the answers we seek will come in His perfect way and timing. In the stillness of listening and the humility of receiving, we find the power, peace, and guidance that only God can provide, and we learn to live each day fully aligned with His purpose. Confidence is not merely a natural trait, it is a spiritual posture rooted in the awareness of God's presence in our lives. When we understand that the Creator of the universe is walking beside us, guiding us, and equipping us, a deep, unshakable confidence begins to grow within our hearts. This confidence is not based on circumstances, achievements, or human approval, because those things are fleeting and unpredictable. It is anchored in something far greater, God Himself. When we start our day in prayer, when we pause to be still, and when we actively engage in faith, we are reminded that we are never alone. God's presence is not conditional, and it does not waver based on our performance or our failures. This assurance gives us the courage to face challenges boldly, to make decisions wisely, and to act decisively, knowing that we are supported by a power beyond ourselves. Living with confidence through God's presence also reshapes our perspective on fear. Fear often arises when we feel vulnerable, when outcomes seem uncertain, or when obstacles appear insurmountable. But when we recognize that God is present in every situation, fear begins to lose its grip. We realize that the difficulties we face are not greater than the one who is guiding us. His power surrounds us, His wisdom directs us, and His love protects us. Confidence born of God's presence is not arrogant or boastful. It is humble, steadfast, and anchored in truth. It allows us to approach life with courage, even when the road ahead is unknown or when trials threaten to overwhelm us. Moreover, confidence in God's presence empowers us to walk in purpose. When we know that God is with us, we can move forward with clarity and determination without being paralyzed by doubt or hesitation. Every step we take becomes intentional, guided by faith and informed by divine insight. This confidence transforms ordinary actions into acts of obedience and service because we operate not from fear or self-interest, but from the knowledge that we are aligned with God's will. It strengthens our ability to persevere, to endure setbacks, and to remain steadfast even when progress seems slow. Confidence through God's presence also inspires boldness in prayer and action. When we are assured that God is with us, we are free to step into challenges, speak truth, and pursue our calling without hesitation. We are no longer ruled by insecurity or uncertainty. Instead, we are propelled by faith. This kind of confidence attracts blessings, opens doors, and positions us to fulfill our purpose. It shapes the way we interact with others, allowing us to extend encouragement, love, and strength because we are filled with the certainty that our steps are guided by divine wisdom. Finally, confidence through God's presence cultivates inner peace. When we rest in the knowledge that God is by our side, we no longer carry the heavy burden of trying to control everything ourselves. We can navigate life with assurance, knowing that even in moments of challenge, we are supported, sustained, and empowered. This peace radiates outward, impacting our decisions, our relationships, and the influence we have on the world around us. Confidence rooted in God is not temporary or circumstantial. It is enduring, unshakable, and transformative, shaping every aspect of our lives for His glory and our good. Life is filled with storms. There are days when circumstances feel overwhelming, when challenges seem relentless, and when the noise of the world threatens to shake our very foundation. In such moments, we need something that holds us steady, something that keeps our hearts and minds grounded. That anchor is prayer. Prayer is not merely a ritual or a habit. It is the unshakable point of connection with God that secures our soul in the midst of life's turbulence. Just as an anchor holds a ship firm against waves and currents, prayer holds our spirit firm against fear, doubt, and uncertainty. It keeps us rooted in truth, in faith, and in the unchanging presence of God. When we pray, we are drawing strength from a source far beyond ourselves. We are saying, Lord, I cannot face this alone. I need you to hold me steady, guide my steps, and give me wisdom. That acknowledgement is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of profound courage and trust. It is in the practice of turning to God daily, especially in the morning when the day is fresh and the mind is clear, that we establish an anchor strong enough to endure any storm. The storms may rage, the winds may howl, but those who are anchored in prayer stand firm. Prayer as an anchor also provides perspective. When life feels chaotic, it is easy to become overwhelmed by problems, distractions, and fears. But in prayer, we step back from the chaos and gain clarity. We are reminded that we are not the authors of our lives. God is. We are reminded that challenges are temporary, lessons are eternal, and His power is limitless. This perspective transforms anxiety into peace, confusion into understanding, and desperation into hope. The anchor of prayer stabilizes not just our emotions, but our entire outlook on life. Furthermore, prayer strengthens resilience. It is the foundation upon which faith is built and the safe harbor to which we return when doubts arise. The more we engage in consistent prayer, the more we cultivate a spirit that can withstand trials without being swept away, it equips us to respond to challenges with calm confidence rather than panic, to act with discernment rather than impulsiveness, and to persevere when others might give up. Just as a ship anchored securely can ride out the fiercest storm without drifting, so too can a life anchored in prayer navigate the difficulties of life without being overwhelmed. Prayer as an anchor also deepens our intimacy with God. It is in these moments of connection that we experience His guidance, hear His voice, and feel His presence in ways that transform our hearts and minds. Anchored in prayer, we are not tossed about by circumstances or swayed by the opinions of others. We are grounded in His promises, strengthened by His Spirit, and empowered to walk boldly in our purpose. Ultimately, the anchor of prayer gives us stability, peace, and unwavering confidence. It secures our hearts in God's presence, holds our spirit firm in faith, and prepares us to face each day with courage. In a world of uncertainty, prayer is the steadfast foundation on which a life of victory, hope, and divine alignment is built.